A soul can live 1,000 days in a single breath and still be called home before sunrise. In a mountain village veiled by early fog, there was a boy named Hamin who never made it to 15. He was born in silence and left in silence, as if the world was only ever a station, not a destination. No pain, no warning, just a body beneath the apricot tree and a breeze that carried no explanation. People mourned. His mother folded his clothes every morning for months. His father spoke to walls as if his son had simply stepped into the next room. But the oldest monk in the province, summoned from a distant temple, whispered a strange thing. He was not taken. He simply remembered it was time to go. What could that mean? How does a soul so young vanish so suddenly, unless it had already lived far longer than we can see? Could a child's quiet death be the final ripple of a life once drenched in storm? Before we begin, feel free to like and subscribe if this story opens something within you. Because what follows is not just a tale of grief, it's a lantern in the dark, one that invites you to see the hidden reasons behind the sorrow and the strange mercies that sometimes arrive disguised as loss. In Buddhist teachings, death is never random. The moment it arrives is not a thief in the night, but a mirror of past choices. When someone dies young, it may be the result of certain karmic roots, deep and unspoken. A past life steeped in violence or cruelty. A moment of joy at another's death. A vow once made in anger. Or even a mocking word directed toward the sacred. These are not punishments, but echoes. What then might Hamin's soul have done long ago? He was tender with animals. He offered crumbs to sparrows. He sat for hours watching ants rebuild their hill. In this life, he was gentle, but karma does not start with birth. It begins long before memory. Perhaps in another skin, he had taken life out of fear or rage. Perhaps he had whispered curses in temples or celebrated the ruin of another. Or perhaps he had ended his own life once and was now learning the cost of a path unfinished. But not all early deaths are repayment. Some are relief. What if, had Hamin lived, he would have stepped into unbearable sorrow? What if this life was offered simply as a breath of peace between storms? In Buddhist thought, some souls choose brief incarnations not to suffer, but to spare others, or to redirect a karmic wheel spinning toward disaster. Even in death, Hamin left gifts. His mother, once broken, now teaches songs to orphaned children. His brother, once angry, became a healer. His passing cracked the earth, but from that crack, wildflowers bloomed. And no one knows why, but the apricot tree, where he lay now, bears fruit even in winter. Was that karma too? You must ask yourself, what is the value of a short life if it leaves behind long compassion? What is death if it awakens 100 others to live more kindly? And could it be that some flames burn brightest just before they disappear? No one remembers the monk's name, who came to bless Hamin's body, but they remember what he said: "This boy did not die, he returned." A river runs shallow, where the earth remembers fire. So too does a life run short, when the soul recalls harm. When a life ends before its time, we ask the sky, the doctors, the gods. But the answer often lies within the invisible, beneath the skin of this world. In Buddhist understanding, death is not a sudden thief. It is the flowering of seeds sown long before breath was drawn. And certain seeds, once planted, can call the soul home far too soon. There are 5 such karmic roots known to shorten life, each subtle, each powerful, each woven into the fabric of action and intention. 1. Taking life with hatred or indifference. The most direct cause of a shortened lifespan is the act of killing. Not merely physical death dealt by the hand, but the spirit with which it is done. Those who take life in rage, in pleasure, or with disregard, whether human, animal, or even one's own, create heavy disturbances in the karmic flow. It is not always remembered. A soldier on a battlefield long ago, a hunter who killed with pride, a person who celebrated another's misfortune. The soul records what the mind forgets. Even joyful violence, laughing at suffering, cheering for death, leaves cracks in the vessel of life. Over time, those cracks become openings through which the soul may leave early. 2. Encouraging harm or rejoicing in death. Karma responds not only to actions, but to intentions and alignments. Urging others to do harm, supporting cruelty, feeling glad when misfortune befalls someone else. These leave shadows that, though invisible, follow the soul across lifetimes. Imagine a man who once stood silently while a mob condemned an innocent, or a woman who encouraged another to end their life. These moments, though passive, carry great karmic weight. To participate in death, even without lifting a hand, can shorten one's time under the sun. 3. long-standing hatred and emotional poison. When hatred festers across years, across lives, it becomes a toxin that seeps into the stream of being. A soul that cannot forgive binds itself to the one it resents. These unresolved ties create spiritual friction, which, left unchecked, may cut a life short to avoid confrontation with past pain. It is not vengeance, it is protection. The soul, sensing a reunion with an old adversary, may choose to step aside rather than reignite ancient fires. Have you ever met someone whose presence unsettled you without reason? What if that reason is older than memory? 4. Mocking the sacred, obstructing the good. To ridicule what is holy, to mock virtue, to insult those who practice truth, is to darken the windows of the soul. Likewise, to prevent others from doing good, to lead someone away from healing or wisdom, creates karma that can cloud an entire lifetime. Even careless words, dismissive laughter at something pure can sow the roots of a future life that ends too soon, not as punishment, but because clarity was blocked before it could grow. The soul that belittles light may forget how to see. 5. Abusing the body, then and now. The body is not owned, it is entrusted. Those who harm their body through excess, recklessness, or neglect plant seeds of disconnection from life. And when in a past existence, the body was treated as meaningless through addiction, violence, or even suicide, the soul may carry a fractured relationship with incarnation itself. It may enter life again, but not stay long. Even now, when someone disrespects their health, rushes toward destruction, or fails to honor rest and care, they may be activating echoes from before. These 5 karmic causes do not always act alone. Sometimes they braid together into one fragile thread, waiting to snap. But here is the quiet truth. None of these are punishments. They are lessons unlearned. The soul, shaped by its own actions, writes a path that leads not to suffering, but to insight. Have you ever looked at a child and felt they were older than they appeared? Have you ever sensed that someone's time was brief from the very beginning? Perhaps they carried one of these ancient seeds. And perhaps that seed had to bloom so the soul could start again, somewhere new, somewhere softer. The flame you refuse to extinguish may one day burn down the house you call a life. Of all karmic threads that shorten a life, few are as hidden and corrosive as unresolved hatred. In Buddhist understanding, karma is not limited to actions. It includes emotion, intention, and the energy we carry through time. Hatred, especially when bound tightly to a soul we once loved, creates a spiritual gravity that can distort the course of future lives. Where forgiveness is absent, the soul becomes heavy, and sometimes too heavy to remain long in this world. And imagine 2 souls, once deeply connected, perhaps as siblings, lovers, parent, and child. But something in that past life fractured. Betrayal, abandonment, cruel words never healed. One soul moves on, the other does not. That unresolved emotional wound hardens into resentment, and resentment clings like smoke. When these souls cross paths again in a future life, the weight of that old tension can become unbearable. There was once a young woman named Hannah, born into a quiet family by the sea. She loved painting birds, she laughed easily, and wept often. But as she grew, she became withdrawn, especially around her father. No harm had ever come from him. Yet whenever he entered the room, Hannah would shiver. Her mother thought it was simply moodiness, but in her journal, Hannah wrote something strange. "He feels like someone I ran from." Hannah died at 20. A sudden illness the doctors couldn't explain. Only later, in meditation, her mother saw a vision. Hannah standing in a foreign time, dressed in crimson, holding a letter she refused to deliver. Her father, then a different man, had once begged for forgiveness. She had turned away. The roles had reversed. In this life, he loved her deeply, but the karmic wound was still raw. And Hannah's soul, unready to face the full weight of reunion, chose to leave instead. Was it cowardice? No, it was a kind of protection for both of them. In the spiritual laws of cause and effect, unhealed hatred between closely tied souls creates a pressure. The soul may instinctively step out of life before that pressure erupts into pain, repeating cycles of blame and grief. Dying early can in some cases prevent greater suffering that neither party is prepared to handle. This form of karmic exit is not an escape, it is a deferral. The lesson remains, but for now, the soul returns to stillness, gathering strength for another try. Have you ever met someone who made your skin crawl, despite their kindness? Have you ever loved someone you also feared, without knowing why? These strange recognitions may be karmic echoes, unfinished business lingering between lifetimes. And when the tension becomes too great, the soul may quietly slip away to avoid confrontation. That is why monks speak often of the power of forgiveness, not just in this life, but across all lifetimes. It is not merely a virtue, it is survival. A soul weighed down by hate shortens its own path, not out of failure, but out of fatigue. But here lies the hope. When one soul chooses to forgive, even after the other has gone, that light reaches beyond the grave. It softens future lives. It clears unseen pathways. It clears unseen pathways. It clears unseen pathways. Years after Hannah's death, her father sat at the sea every morning, sketching birds in a notebook she had left behind. He did not speak much, but every page was titled the same way. "Come back when you're ready. I won't turn away." Perhaps that too was karma. Not the karma that causes early death, but the karma that waits and welcomes and begins again. Because even hatred can become a bridge, if the soul is willing to cross it. Some souls do not flee death, they walk toward it like a friend, not because they are broken, but because they have seen what lies ahead. There is a belief, quiet and rarely spoken aloud, that not all who die young are victims of karma. Some are volunteers, and in the ancient halls of Sion temples, where incense clings to the stones and monks sweep in silence, stories are still told of spirits who agreed to return only briefly, not to suffer, not to repay, but to shield others from the heavier blows of fate. These are the souls who carry wisdom too old for their age, children who speak with eyes too still, teenagers who offer comfort to grieving adults, as if they've known that pain before. And just when they begin to blossom, they vanish. Why? Sometimes it is because staying would entangle them in a karmic web that no longer serves their journey. Other times, they sense what lies further down the road, the collapse of a family, the outbreak of war, the slow poisoning of the spirit by a world not ready for their gentleness. To die young, in these rare cases, is not defeat. It is an act of quiet departure, a turning away from chaos before it begins. There was once a boy named June. He was born into a house soaked in grief. His father was a silent man who had once committed terrible harm. His mother, always ill, had tried to take her own life more than once. And yet, June brought light. As a child, he would sit beside his mother and hum songs she hadn't heard since girlhood. He drew cranes and lotus flowers and left them by his father's door. The family, once on the edge of collapse, began to soften. But one winter morning, June did not wake. No pain, no sickness, only the stillness of snow outside, and a child gone before the sun rose. Many would call it tragedy. But a monk who came to perform the rites stood long over the boy's body and said only he has finished what he came for. And what had he come for? To hold back a storm, to balance a house till it could stand again, to give his family a second chance before vanishing like mist. His death, though devastating, shook his parents awake. His mother gave her life to caring for others. His father, who had once hurt many, turned himself in and lived the rest of his days, tending to prisoners who had never been shown kindness. Could June have stayed longer? Yes. But he didn't need to. His karmic role was complete. This is the secret known only to the soul. Sometimes departure is not failure. Sometimes it is timing. When you see a child who seems to glow softly, as though remembering a different sky, do not be surprised if they leave early. Their spirit may have chosen to walk only part of the path, offering light and then stepping away before the world grows too dark. It is a silent agreement made before birth. I will come. I will bring what I must, and when the time is right, I will go. Who among us has not sensed the presence of someone who felt too pure for this place, too bright, too kind for the sharp edges of the world? Perhaps they knew, perhaps they chose, and perhaps their life, though short, left behind a clarity that a long one never could. Some lessons are written not in years, but in moments. Some healers do not wear robes. They wear school uniforms. They hum lullabies, and then they vanish like wind through pine trees, but the pine still sways long after. The rain does not ask if the flower is ready to bloom. It simply falls, and sometimes that is the blessing. There is a truth rarely spoken, even in the most sacred of temples. Some deaths are acts of mercy, not from gods, not from outside forces, but from within the soul itself. When the karmic web becomes too dense, too entangled, or too dangerous to continue weaving, a soul may leave early, not to escape its debts, but to prevent deeper harm. Just as a gardener will prune a branch to save the tree, some lives end not in punishment, but in protection. Imagine a girl named Sohi, bright, artistic, always humming while she painted. She had survived a difficult birth and grew into a teenager full of potential. But at 16, she was diagnosed with a sudden illness, and within months, she was gone. Her parents were shattered. Her mother screamed at the sky. Her father wandered the streets for days, trying to understand. But then they found her journal, page after page of quiet insight. Sometimes I feel like I'm here only to keep mom from breaking. If I go early, will it stop dad from making the same mistake again? I think I was someone else before, someone who hurt too many people. Maybe now, I just want to help. These weren't the words of a frightened child. They were the reflections of a soul who had seen too much and chose stillness over spiraling further. In Buddhist teaching, this is not rare. There are souls who, recognizing the karmic turbulence of their environment, choose to absorb part of it, transmute it, and then depart. This is not martyrdom, it is balance, a form of compassion that appears as death, but contains within it a gift, one that may only be understood years later. So He's father, who had once battled addiction and disappeared for days at a time, never drank again. Her mother, who had considered ending her own life years before, began volunteering with grieving parents, offering them words no one else could give. Would those transformations have happened if so he had lived? Or was her brief presence, her departure, the very condition that allowed healing to begin? What if dying young can sometimes prevent others from dying broken? There is a parable told in the countryside. A bridge was about to collapse, but a child playing there stepped into the path of a wagon. The driver swerved to avoid her and discovered the failing wood just in time. The child passed, but the village remained. Was it accident or intercession? We cannot always know the full depth of a soul's journey. Some young deaths may look like unfinished stories, but in truth, they are sealed scrolls, written in another realm, closed before their ink could fade. To those left behind, the pain is real. The absence echoes in everything, but from a karmic lens, that pain may be a portal, one that shifts the course of those who remain, nudging them toward paths they would never have walked otherwise. Have you ever changed because someone left too soon? Have you ever grown softer, more aware, more awake because of what their absence revealed? Mercy does not always look like healing. Sometimes it looks like departure. Sometimes it is a hand letting go before the fall begins. And sometimes it is the greatest act of love a soul can offer, to come briefly, touch the world gently, and vanish before it gets too loud to hear what really matters. Not all flowers are meant to last the season. Some bloom once, briefly, then return to the soil to bloom again elsewhere. There was an old monk who lived alone on the edge of Jeju's rocky coast. His days were silent, his movements slow, his prayers steady as the tide. When asked why he lived so far from others, he simply said, "I am waiting for someone who already left." It was later discovered that he had once been a father, a young man with a daughter who died at the age of 8. She had loved the sea. On the day she died, he had carried her to the cliffs, held her in his arms as she slipped away, and promised never to forget the sound of her laughter in the wind. The world called it a tragedy, but the monk never used that word. She was not lost, he said. She simply had another garden to bloom in. In Buddhist reflection, the soul is not bound by one life. When a young person dies, it is never the end. It may in fact be a beginning in another realm, a return, a gentle passing into a place more aligned with their spirit's vibration. Just as a lotus blooms best in still water, some souls cannot thrive in a world too loud, too cruel, too chaotic. They leave not in defeat, but to blossom in another realm, a realm where the karma is softer, or the lessons more gentle. This is why monks often say, the child who dies young may reappear as a bodhisattva elsewhere, quietly, lovingly, unseen. And those they leave behind, they are not left empty, they are left transformed. A mother who loses her son finds herself suddenly able to comfort grieving strangers with a kind of wisdom she never asked for. A teacher whose student passes away starts writing books that touch thousands. A sibling, once jealous and distant, becomes the protector of all that is small and sacred. Could any of that have happened if the one they lost had remained? Sometimes, the soul of the departed was never meant to walk the full road, but to set others on theirs. There is a story told in winter temples. A blossom grew from the side of a cliff, too exposed to survive the cold winds. It bloomed for a single morning, and then it was gone. But a passing traveler, seeing its brief beauty, changed course. He built a shrine there, and over time, the shrine became a village. The flower did not survive, but it gave something that did. So too are those who die young. They are not failures of fate. They are echoes of something ancient, messengers, redirectors, living sutras written in short verses. And while grief may never fully loosen its grip, we are invited to ask, what if their departure was not absence, but redirection? What if, like seeds scattered by wind, they are now blooming in a realm we cannot yet see? The old monk died one winter morning. No one was with him, But when the villagers found him, the waves were unusually calm, and the rocks around his hut were covered in white wildflowers. Flowers that had not grown there in over 50 years. A child's favorite flower, and in the sky a lone bird circled once, then vanished. The flower that withers here may bloom elsewhere, where pain does not follow and time is a circle, not a line. Some lives arrive like a whisper, then vanish before the world can speak back. But in their absence, something else begins. Grief softens, wisdom awakens, entire paths change course. The karma of dying young is not always sorrowful. Sometimes it is the soul's way of choosing peace over pain, clarity over chaos. What seems like an end may be a turning point, one that only the spirit truly understands. So if you have lost someone too soon, listen, not with your ears, but with your life. Are you becoming someone they would have smiled at? Are you walking the path they cleared by leaving first? Their story is not finished. It now continues through you. Thanks for walking this path with me. Until the next story,